Firstly, a thanks to Platonic Friends for sponsoring this episode. Hi everyone and welcome back to SwitchUp and to the series that hopefully you love as much as I do, where we go back and visit some games that were released, sometimes in not the best state, and have received quite a few patches since, so I try and tell you whether they've been all patched up or not. In this episode, we've got No Man's Sky, a patch of which came out today, Sonic Frontiers, Kao The Kangaroo, and Disney's Dreamlight Valley. Thanks to everyone that put their suggestions in the comment that I put out. If yours isn't in this episode, then it might be in the next one. As always, if you want to save 10% on any of your eShop games, you can use code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg. Alright, have these 4 games been all patched up? Well, let's find out. Let's start off then with Kao the Kangaroo. If you weren't aware when we first reviewed this at launch, it had a game-breaking bug in it that essentially meant that at a random and unspecified time, you would lose all of your progress. It wasn't if it was going to happen, it was when it was going to happen. And we thought we'd got away with it, but then just as Glen was going to edit the review, he lost all of his progress and it sent him all the way back to square one. A complete disaster really that a bug like that would slip through. Other than that, the overall performance was okay, and the visual quality as well was pretty decent in comparison to some of the games we'll look at today. Now, since launch, there's been a whole DLC added. As you can see, visual quality looks to have taken a slight step up. What I haven't done with this game is shown frame rates, because just by eyeballing it, it is so much better than it was before, but also that wasn't really the issue. It was those crashes. And as far as I can tell, and with there being a DLC that's come out since that you can see on screen, it does look like they have fixed the crashing problem. The actual game itself is a classic, almost N64 era platformer where you've got this hub world that you then move to your different regions from. But the worst thing about this game is the ridiculous voice acting. Just check out this main character's voice.
I want to wear them.
It's a real shame. They could have asked me or Glen. Can you imagine that? Look, Mum, I've been all patched up. Good job, son. You've made me proud.
Of course I am.
The sponsor of this episode is Little Gator Game, which releases on the 14th of December, published by Platonic Friends and developed by Megawobble, who are offering a 30% pre-order discount. It's a beautiful 60 frames per second adventure title that encapsulates that feeling of being a child and just playing in the environment. It takes the threat out of the adventure but still keeps the actual enjoyment. You can slide around on your shield, drift by using an old t-shirt as a parachute, and you're joined by a group of friends who are trying to help you to entice your now older sister back into playing games with you. You'll even work together to make an awesome fortress out of an old playground. There's a simplified crafting system, loads of hidden areas and items, as well as challenges to take part in, and it's one of those experiences that has a beautiful soundtrack and is so easy to pick up and play. Truly a charming experience and one not to miss out on. Thanks to Platonic Friends for sponsoring this episode. Which takes us on to Sonic Frontiers. As you know, I did a performance review of Sonic Frontiers when it came out, and it was, the performance was okay in fairness. It maintained 30 frames per second most of the time, but I'd seen better visual quality on the inside of a public toilet. It was a mess, a blurry mess with an incredible amount of pop-in. And when we jump over to today, well, it's had a few patches, and does it look any better? This is one of those where it's not night and day, let's be honest, and the in-game resolution is still incredibly low. Textures remain flat, pop-in remains prevalent. Maybe it's a little better than it was before, but if you're gonna play on any TVs larger than around 12 inches, you may want to just squint a little. As I said in the review though, this is a game designed predominantly for kids at Christmas, and I don't think they're gonna mind when you're playing in handheld. Shrinking it down does a lot to make things look a little bit nicer. What I will say is that frame pacing seems better than it did before. Although you can still drop that frame rate down a little, the rate at which the frames are delivered to the screen seems relatively consistent, and your input latencies seem lower than they were before. This has the illusion, at least, of making things feel and look a little smoother. So it's not a bad effort for Sonic really compared to some of the games we've looked at recently. I would just love it if they could somehow force that resolution a little higher. It looks like they've increased the draw distance of some of the Sky platforms. If you remember, these were very close to the camera and you could see them popping in and out. Well, you can still see some of them pop, but there's also others that previously weren't visible, you can now see those in the distance, kind of glitching in and out. Then we have Dreamlight Valley. Now, I actually thought this was a very good game. I really enjoyed it and was surprised by how compulsive it was. But the resolution was quite low and performance was generally stuttery and a little bit of a mess. But that wasn't the main problem. The main issue were a number of crashes. The further you got into it, the more it would crash, and even to the extent that it might actually affect your progression. And I'm pleased to say that so far in my testing, it looks like most of the crashing issues have actually been resolved with this latest patch, version 1.2.0. Also, if you look at the image quality, that's been, to my eye, significantly improved, potentially through a bump in resolution. The flip side of that, though, is it's also maybe a little more stuttery than it was before. While the frame rate can hit 30 and stick there for a while, you'll see hitching as you pan the camera or as you move from one area to the next. It's another one that I prefer to play in handheld. It can probably go into one of those cozy games lists, just running around with all your favourite characters there. Now, aside from the improved image quality, there's still some pop in here. Texture resolution looks better than it did before, and most noticeably for me are the shadows. They're much crisper with a higher resolution than they had originally. When standing still, it really does look quite nice now. Certainly one of the better looking Switch games. I think fans are going to be happy with the improved stability. That was probably the main annoyance for most, just having a game crash or lock out or soft lock. There's nothing quite as annoying as that. So yeah, it actually seems at least to work now. If obviously you have a crash, please on any of these games let me know down in the comments, because I'll add it to the top pinned comment. Last but not least then, we have No Man's Sky. This is now up to version 4.0.8 with a new update literally dropping today when I went to check. Now, there was an update out a couple of days ago and I was all ready and recorded with my frame rates captured to say that it had done a little bit, but they hadn't improved much, and that actually I thought they'd made some aspects a little bit worse. Well, I think Sean Murray was waiting for me just with the troll face meme, because this latest update is really quite excellent. If we look back at the original release of the game, although it looked quite blurry, it could perform okay, generally 30 frames per second with very good transitions between the planet's surface and up into space. But if you built a large base, you could bring that frame rate down so very, very low when you got your ship and you flew towards your own base. It was something that was really easy to repeat. Whenever you got your spaceship and just flew over your base or flew across the surface of the planet, you'd see some significant drops in performance. Now, however, what are things like after the patch? Well, as I think you can see already, probably from the footage, it's much better than it was before. Even to the point where I can now fly my ship straight over the base, and it might take a minor hit in performance, but it's nothing like the 15 to 20 frames per second it was. Overall, the frame pacing seems better than it was before. It's a much smoother and less stuttery experience. Sure, the planets that I'm on are quite desolate. There's a chance that if you find one that's incredibly dense, then you'll be able to bring that frame rate down some more, but it is certainly improved on what it was when I first looked at the game. Pop-in remains a thing, and I don't think that's ever going away, just with the way the game procedurally generates these planets and has to stream load the assets as you fly around. I mean, it's a miracle, it really is, that it's running on the Switch, because as we know, the CPU and the memory aren't the fastest. Playing in handheld, again, looks better to me, runs more smoothly, and for me, No Man's Sky is one of the most impressive ports. And then for them to be able to actually improve what they did in such a short period of time, I mean, what, it's been a month, maybe a couple of months? It really is quite impressive, isn't it? And I think some developers could take some serious lessons here. So overall for me, this is the pick of the week in terms of performance improvements. The visual quality potentially is slightly better, but you can see where sacrifices are made in terms of shadow draw distance, as well as assets that have to be loaded in close enough to the camera that it's visibly obvious. But still, I don't mind, and nor does my little pet here. He absolutely loves it. So that is it. Please do let me know in the comments if this has been of any use and any games that you would really like to see revisited. I had downloaded Black Legend and it was good to go, but then the No Man's Sky patch came up and I was like, do you know what, that's actually big enough that I really want to talk about it. Black Legend will get its time to shine because they have massively improved that since it came out, and yeah, I think it'll be a nice one. It certainly makes it a hidden gem. All that's left to say then is if you like the Joy-Cons in this video, there's links and everything in the description. If you want to save 10%, links and everything in the description. And if you're a physical collector, guess what? Links and everything in the description. Thanks to our Patreons and our members as well. You guys are amazing. You keep the lights on in this little square room that I am sat in, and it is massively appreciated that anyone even wants to watch our stuff, so nice one. And if you want to check out that little Gator game, I'll pop links to that in the description. That really is a delight. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys. See ya!